Hello and welcome to European Goals. I'm Nee West and welcome to a new podcast series based on my travels across Europe in search of top-level football, whilst exploring the cities and what they have to offer to the uncultured like me. It was 2014, feeling a little lost in life. The lads' holidays were long gone, but the urge for travel was there. With our team Exeter City languishing in League Two, my old mate Donny and I would embark on our new choice of adventure. First stop, Amsterdam and AFC Ajax. All tickets acquired, we arrived at Exeter Airport for our Flybe flight. Yes, remember them? Once passing security's shifty questions, that is. Yes, sir, we are going for the football. Do we look like drug mules to you? Actually, from the look of our passport photos, I guess we probably did. A short 90-minute journey, tea, biscuit and boiled sweet later, we landed safely at Schiphol Airport, busy and bustling, but being the third busiest due to its many connections, this was expected. The only hiccup came from the gentleman driving the airport transfer bendy bus and going the wrong way, thus attempting the three-point turn and near snapping the thing in two. He was brought to a grinding halt and replaced by a lady that brought the women driving myth to an end. After finding the correct bus into the city via the typical English point and hope for the best methods, it became clear at the heart of Amsterdam there wouldn't be many cars, but trams, bicycles and boats to navigate and jump out of the way of. Our accommodation was Hotel La Bohème, named after the opera. Based in a historical building, steep steps and no lift, it was perfect for leg day. Great location, basic rooms, but definitely a home from home, proven by the cuddly house cat. The staff were so friendly and knowledgeable, couldn't do enough for us. Brilliant continental breakfasts, with shots and specialty beers in the evening. This place was sound, and we would return for sure. Even to have a shit, shave and a shower was fun, as this would be our first encounter with a shelf toilet, prevalent in Europe and older installations. I would call it a shit shelf, or maybe on closer inspection, once flushed, a log launcher. But if you weren't careful, your morning ablutions would all be rolled into one, not two. What's for sure is we would leave every day refreshed and set for whatever the day would throw at us. That leads us nicely into this episode's City Summary. Canals, cyclists, cafes, bridges, boats, and lots of weed. More bongs than the news at 10. But maybe that's why the lovely locals are so chilled. The heart of the city is small, and we covered nearly all of it on foot in just a few days. Wonky buildings, cafes and bars show off the historic nature of the buildings. Built on wooden stilts and marshland probably wasn't the best mix. Lots of retail units almost around every corner, so they all ended up looking the same. Or was that just the haze in the air? I can confirm C&A clothing is still going strong in its country of origin. Big up brothers Clemens and August Brenningmeyer.
Come and C&A. It's such a surprising store.
So where did we go? It had to be the Van Hoff Museum, as the Dutch would pronounce it. Such a legendary post-impressionist painter, but as it happened with so many geniuses, flawed and died far too young. Vincent was mentally unstable and had many psychotic and delusional episodes, culminating in a fight with his friend Paul Gauguin, and then in a rage cutting his left ear off with a razor. Time in hospitals could not cure the depression in his life. On his own discharge, ending it with a shot from a rifle to his own chest. This was a perfect artistic journey of light and dark, through the eyes of a troubled mind. I'm no expert and would urge anyone to look up one of the many documentaries on this great man. A supporting exhibition of art brought some unlikely comic relief, in a sense of much nudity. Paintings were 3 abreast, and there were more tools and tits than the red light district. Having had an eye full of skin, via some evening eats at the Hard Rock, we headed back to the hotel to stroke the house pussy and calm down with a spicy, chilly beer. With all the water about, there had to be a maritime museum, and this is a huge part of Dutch history through the 17th and 18th centuries. Inside you will find interactive exhibits and a massive maritime collection to explore. But we found outside where it was really amazing, where you'll find a jetty with ships you can climb aboard, including a replica of the East Indiaman. This was a ship that vanished on its maiden voyage, eventually being found wrecked in the English Channel. Only in recent times have further stories come out about the colonial trade, violence and slavery of the East India Company, which sheds a new light on the company's history and the existence of this replica. Anyone fancy a pint? On to the booze. We visited the Heineken Brewery and Museum. So what did we learn there? Heineken itself was born in 1873, created by Gerard Adriaan Heineken. They used their own yeast called A yeast, giving it a distinctive taste. We were taken through the whole brewing process and the full story, from hops to finishing with a drop of the good stuff and a lot of interactive shenanigans along the way. On the other side of the glass, the House of Bonds. Having just started out on my own cocktail making journey, this place was of great interest. An immersive experience learning the history of bowls and including a long hallway of atomizers to test your sense of smell and guess their 30 plus liqueur flavours just using your snoz. Following our noses, we would reach a machine where you would input your desired tastes to get a printed ticket where you'd finish at the bar with a personalised drink to sing. It's here I would discover a love for Geneva, not the place. Thank you, Lucas Bowles. Since 1575. Geneva is sometimes nicknamed Dutch gin. It's a juniper spirit that mixes a botanical infusion, much like gin, but with the addition of malt wine, i.e. whiskey. It's seen as the ancestor of modern gin, distilled with barley and originating from the 13th century. There are 2 types, old, aromatic malt, or young, which is the neutral, a clear spirit and a bottle I would take home with me. We learned to our own cost after our first of what would be many trips to Irish bars. Stick to the local poison, as our lager logic of picking a stereotypical tipple would hit us to the tune of €8 a pint. And that was a lot of sense in 2014, if a punishment for our lack of sense. So now on to the grub. The first Dutch delicacy I would land on is a Van Dobben croquette. A meat ragout covered in breadcrumbs and deep fried, though this was no horse meat scandal. Van Dobben is named after At Van Dobben, who opened their first sandwich shop in 1945 with future wife Eugenie in the heart of Amsterdam. Eat Salon Van Dobben. This was following the city's liberation from German occupation at the end of World War II. At supplied the meat and Eugenie the sandwich, which would provide the perfect pairing. The croquette was on the menu from the start, with which this dining room would earn its fame and become home to both artists, footballers and the Amsterdam public. Originally prepared across the street in a bicycle repair shop to warm them by means of charcoal, in modern day I was naturally served them up in a pub, as from 1992 the croquette would be distributed not just locally but all across the Netherlands. So what to have on the side? Winning a TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence in 2014 was Chipsy King, a string of chip shops across the city. Sounding a bit like Tyson Fury's favourite takeaway, but I ain't gonna tell him that. You can get served up a boxed round of fries with your favourite knockout topping, perfect for those dazed and having the munchies. Nearby to our hotel, a little closer to home, was Pancake Corner, a selection of sweet and savoury pancakes. Having a healthy appetite, I opted for 2 savoury pizza pancake options, where you could choose your own toppings. This would bring on the first occurrence of what we would then forever call our English pigs moment, as when brought to the small rickety outside table for barely 2 on separate plates, the attractive non-English speaking waitress's face was a picture, and flat as a pancake, when I proceeded to scrape the additional second pancake from one plate on top of the other. Thankfully delicious, they filled both the hole in my stomach and the one I had dug for myself. All suitable footy scran, I'm sure you'll agree, but what would we have pre-game? A beer, of course, from the imaginatively named Grolsch pub, with perfect head, as was commonplace the use of beer combs, pulling a large-headed pint, then scalping the excess foam off the top. Armed with our Kofjord coolers, we decided to go down the hot dog route, only to almost shout, "Stop, stop!" as the vendor fished deeply into a vat of brown water to pull them out. To our relief, these were what was known as a dirty water dog, a sausage that simmered in the seasoned and spicy broth, which, to be frank, made them flavourful and simply fabulous. So it was the 30th of March 2014, match day. Ajax versus FC Twente. We had caught the metro train to Johan Cruyff Arena, named after the Dutch master famous for his magic turn on the pitch. Completed in 1996 and holding over 56,000, this was the largest stadium in the country. It is surrounded by many retail units and other arenas, restaurants, bars, and a cinema. We would easily find our seats and be next to a nice Dutch gentleman who encouraged us to learn the lingo as we flicked through a free program which we were given, of which we couldn't read a word of. What we would learn is that the stadium acoustics would be audible. Being English, we would always look for links to football teams back home and current and former managers and players. Ajax's manager at this time was Frank de Boer, an established former Dutch international with 112 caps, who would go on to manage Crystal Palace in 2017. The Twente manager was Mikkel Janssen, an interim manager due to actual manager Alfred Schreuder not having the relevant coaching qualifications. Alfred took over following the resignation of former England manager Steve McClaren.
I think we are not just what you call underdogs, but massive underdogs. I think there is no expectations for FC Twente, so everything is there for a surprise.
The biggest or maybe smallest name was Bojan. Full name Bojan Krkić Perez. Seen as the next big wonder kid to come out of Barcelona since Lionel Messi. Was seemingly losing his way, and after this loan would go on to play over 70 times for Stoke City under Welsh legend Mark Hughes. In my opinion, his three-pronged attack with Xherdan Shaqiri and Marko Arnautovic lit up the Premier League at times, and we would see for ourselves the talent this lad had. The Ajax team also included former Liverpool defender Christian Poulsen, Daley Blind, who joined Man United at the end of the season, Mike van der Hoorn, who'd gone to play for Swansea, Davy Klaassen for Everton, and more recently Jairo Riedewald for Crystal Palace, and current Brighton player Joel Veltman. The Twente team included Andreas Bjelland, who would sign for Brentford, and two players I'm sure Southampton will remember for scoring belters, the skillful Dusan Tadic and Cuco Martina, the latter also making appearances for Everton and then Stoke on loan. Now, being a FIFA game player for many years, I always like to find the lesser known gems. So two other players I didn't know so well were Kyle Ebersilo, a former Arsenal youth that played on loan at Nottingham Forest, and Joey Pelupessy, who I should have known better, playing over 100 games for Sheffield Wednesday and also playing against Exeter City in January 2021 in an FA Cup match we were at. We did lose 2-0, so maybe that's why it slipped from my memory. Finally, a player who didn't play in England but who we would see again, Quincy Promes. Born in Amsterdam, he had quite the career, including going on to play for Ajax and the Dutch national team, as well as a recent spell in Dubai. So why is the man a story? He was recently convicted of aggravated assault on his cousin and drug trafficking. Extradited in June this year to do his jail time of 7.5 years. He denies the charges. The result itself would be a comfortable Ajax 3-0 win. Stefano Denswil heading a great free kick delivery from the right into the bottom left corner from around the penalty spot in the 29th minute. The first half ending 1-0. Lasse Schöne would finish off a fine passing move from Ajax's own half, tapping a square pass into an empty net in the 58th minute. 7 minutes later in the 65th, Bojan would roll back the years, running onto a pass on the edge of the D and thumping the ball into the top left corner. The thumping would continue on the metro trip back to the city, this time it being the joyful Ajax fans on the carriage roof. AFC Ajax would go on to lift the Eredivisie title that season, 4 points clear of big rivals Feyenoord, and only losing 3 league games all season. We arrived home, pleased we hadn't made a hash of our first football trip abroad, and seemingly having a new sixth sense for those horticulturing the hemp. We were keen to sniff out the next big soccer smoke. Join me next time on the European Goals Podcast, Episode 2, when we'll head off to sunny Spain. Prost!